What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. We're here on the Barndominium build. This is day number 1. Our goal today is to get all of our brackets set up on the wall, installed. A lot of these processes, some of you have seen us do a lot of times, but I'm gonna try to make this build series one that, if you've never been to the RR Buildings channel, you can watch this series and hopefully learn just about everything, because we've been building these barns, shops, garages, man caves, hunting cabins, all these different things, and all those details kind of culminate to this project, which is a Barndominium. It's going to be a full residential build, except we're going to use post frame. I think it has a great advantage. There's a lot of things that we're going to talk about throughout this series. I've already done a little intro to this project, and I asked you guys to put questions down below in the comments so that I could answer them. And I'm going to ask you again, if you've got questions, put them down below in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. I think a lot of people would really benefit by building themselves a post frame home, and so that's my purpose. I'm hoping that this video is super educational. So what we're gonna do is get the walls all measured. Greg's running around while I'm talking to you guys, and he's grabbing the dimensions of the outside of the concrete. So that's what we're gonna start with. All right, so when laying out a foundation wall, guys, and I apologize for the wind, I can't control that. We are in the Midwest. We always think about what our most important wall is, which this is our front wall. It has the most doorways. We're gonna want it to be as close to accurate as possible. Are you, Greg, on your 1.5 mark? Yeah. This wall right here is 96 3/8 of an inch. So what I'm gonna do is make a mark in 1 5/8 inches here. And then I'm gonna hold this. Greg, let me pull. And so Greg now is gonna mark, so we have our full 95 foot 9 inch dimension. You good? So you have to start somewhere, and this might not work out. So I'm just using pencil. We might need to adjust this a little bit, but we did go around, we checked that all these walls are slightly bigger than the dimension we want. So we're kind of fudging to the inside and getting them somewhat in the middle of that area. Let's check this and we'll pull those diagonals. So now in the perfect world, I would use my layout station. Two things. One, most of you guys don't have layout stations, so that doesn't help to show you how to do that. And two, my layout station batteries are dead. So selfishly, I would have used the layout station if I could have, but I can't. So, all right, Greg, that's 9. That's right on the mark. Okay, so now that we have these two walls marked where we want them, we're gonna go ahead and pull some diagonal dimensions to check. What are you off that corner? I should be 1 5/8 inches. Okay, so let's go ahead and check this dimension first. This is the one I use. So what we're gonna do is confirm this dimension with a tape, and Greg is gonna go way to that other corner where he'll hold the end of our diagonal tape, and we'll move those to find the exact square. So go ahead and keep that hooked, and then I need to get my diagonal on my 10 5/8. So because this wall is 48 1/4, we went ahead and moved our marks in 1/8 of an inch on both sides so that we're somewhat centered. And we did the same thing on the wall over there. Now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna take this tape measure, and I should be 107/11 15/16. So what I'm gonna do is find 107/11. Oh my gosh, that's all the way over here. Okay, so as it stands, if we use that wall as it is, we're 2.5 inches. That's not good. Okay, so what we've had to do is we started off with 1.5 inches off the corners. Usually these concrete corners are not good anyway, so we use it as a starting point. We need to shift this wall that way, and Greg way down there needed to come in a little bit. Let's see what we're at now. I'm gonna be at 10 3/8. This wind is stupid. And Greg, let's see, 10 3/8 and 11 15/16. Right about there is where I'm gonna be at. We're still gonna operate in pencil. I'm gonna mark this. Now let's hope that the changes work out for us. So you're like 1 5/8. Hooked on, I should be 10 5/8. 10 5/8. All right, Greg, now take her down there. I mean, I am 96 and 15/16. So we're a 1/16 of an inch short. I think that's probably pretty good. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we found that this is the worst section right here. This right here is off of this corner more than we'd want it to, 2 inches. We're gonna shift this whole building this way 1/4 inch, which means we'll be 1 3/4 here, but we'll only be, what, about 1 3/8 over there? Because we're 1 5/8, which is okay. We would rather have a little overhang than our concrete sticking out past our finished wall. So, all right, Greg, let's do that. So now that we've got our 4 corners marked, gotta be a little bit careful because we're using a chalk line. It is breezy. As long as you keep it down by the wall, it doesn't get affected. Greg is doing his best work over here. Good luck, Greg.
What?
Good luck. It's not, you probably don't even have 100 foot in that net.
Oh, no, I just ran out of chalk.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you don't even have 100 foot there. Okay, so what we're gonna do is I got mine marked here. Are you tight? Yeah, it looks nice and straight. So I'm just gonna come over here in the middle. There. Now we can always re-snap half and half. So I always like to mark the openings, the door locations specifically because we won't be setting any brackets there right now. And it just gives us a visual when we go frame in our doors where our line was. I'm not gonna spray any hairspray or anything to keep these lines. It's just not worth it. By the time we're done today, we should have all these brackets set. All right, now that we have all of our lines snapped, we're just gonna go ahead and run the tape measure around the lines, and we're gonna make marks right where our brackets are gonna be. Greg is burning a foot, so he's actually holding it at 1 foot. So instead of 7 10.5, I'm gonna go 8 10.5, 16 10.5, 24 10.5. All of these posts are gonna be 8 foot on center. And we're just gonna do that on all 4 walls. Let me grab this end. Now this wall is gonna be a little bit unique though, Greg, because we're not gonna do a 64 foot on center post. We want the center of our truss, or sorry, the edge of our truss, which means the edge of the column, to be 63 10.5. Because it's an outside truss at a different height. We have 2 different height buildings coming together. 16 10.5. So there'll be a weird bay right there, but it's no big deal. 56 10.5. So pretty simple. Once you get your 4 corners determined, make sure that they're square. You're gonna go around, get all your post marks, and then we'll start drilling in our anchor bolts for our brackets as soon as we get this done. So what I've done is grab myself a bracket, made myself a middle mark, and I'm just gonna go around where all these marks are and where our snap line is, line up my middle mark, and just use my marker to make a permanent line, because this is going to get taken away when we get some rain. If you can see it, probably not. It's probably just a few minutes away from getting a pretty good storm here. So this is nice also. Normally we would get all of our brackets installed right now that we have everything marked. I just don't think we've got the time. So it is an extra step. I know some of you might say take a can of like hairspray or clear sealer and just spray it, and then you'll never have to worry about your lines going away. But honestly, I just don't have any of that on me right now. So it's a great tip for those of you that are in this situation later. But I'm just gonna go around real quick, give myself a permanent line, so when we get back here after this rain, I can set my brackets right on those marks and know that they're where they should be. And then what I like to do here on the corners is just use my nice straight edge just to get a little bit better corner line. You can see all these different lines. As we always use pencil first. That way we know the marker is the one that we decided to go with when we figured it all out. Well, I'm pretty glad that we went ahead and got all those marks on the wall, because the weatherman wasn't lying. We just got a nice storm roll through. We found a 2-inch piece of hail. Greg tells me that...
Maybe twice size, 5 4.
Okay, so 3 to 4 inch piece struck his truck while we were eating lunch in it, and it left a dent. So it had some pretty big hail for just a real quick period of time, and now it's just raining. No big deal though. We've got all those marks on the wall. We put the Sharpie marker, and when the rain stops, we can go out and get all those brackets mounted. All right, so these are the brackets that we are using, and these are the Sturdy Wall 63 OT, which means 2x6 3-ply Ohio Timberland, because we're using Ohio Timberland brackets. And these brackets are made by Midwest Perma, who makes the same brackets that we wet set into concrete. If you're looking to get a traditional mortgage and your bank doesn't want to lend out the money because you're putting posts in the ground, well, you should never put posts in the ground. Go ahead and get yourself some Midwest Perma. Either do it on a foundation wall like we are doing here, or maybe a concrete pier. If you want, I will put the information for Midwest Perma down below. If you use my name, actually they will give you a nice little savings. They will ship around really anywhere in the US, I believe. Obviously, you got to pay for shipping, so if you're in, I don't know, Seattle, Washington or something, it's going to be a little bit more expensive than if you're in the Midwest. But regardless, Midwest Perma, great brackets, makes for a sturdy foundation. I'll guarantee that. All right, so now that the bracket is set with our Tapcons, we're going to use these 6" by 5/8 Simpson Titan HD anchors. We're just going to go ahead and use a 5/8 bit. We'll go ahead and drill these down. One thing you definitely want to make sure is that you go deep enough. I always just go ahead and bury this bit. And then what you're going to want to do is just make sure that it's cleaned out. You don't have to vacuum this out because, quite frankly, when you put these bolts in, these serrated edges are going to do the same thing. They're going to create a bunch of debris, and you just want to make sure that the hole is deep enough so that debris goes down, and then it's also going to aid in the bite, so you don't have to use any epoxy or anything. And you're not going to want to over tighten them, but anytime you put in a bolt or a fastener, give it a good smack. That way you know that you're holding good. This Milwaukee SDS 1 9/16, I believe. This is the 1 3/4. It's a beast, and you don't even feel the vibration. It's got very good vibration control. Oh yeah, solid. All right, so when doing elevation, always get yourself a grade stick. It doesn't have to be super fancy, but they do make the job a lot easier. Now we're gonna go ahead and turn this laser on. This is the 350 from Stabila, top of the line laser. I like to go ahead and speed it up. All right, the first thing that we like to do is go ahead and set our receiver on a grade stick. I got my laser going, and I'm gonna come over to my wall here. I'm just gonna pick an arbitrary bracket, and we're gonna set this laser receiver so that it tones out right in the middle of my bracket. It's important that you keep your grade stick plumb. You don't want it leaning one way or the other. Luckily, my grade stick has a bubble on the back, so I can visually see that it is standing plumb. This is very important. Not all projects do you not have elevation already, mapped out somewhere. So a lot of projects, somebody is going to set an elevation, and then the whole job will be taken off of that. And so once you have an elevation mark, you would come, set your laser up, turn it on, set your grade stick to 0 so that it is at that elevation, whether it's a piece of concrete somewhere that you put a mark on, a surveyor puts a stake in the ground, and then the top of that stake is the elevation. Whatever that is, it is always important to establish that prior to building. We don't really need to do that in this case because the foundation was done and the top of wall should be the top of floor, which is our 0 elevation. So we already know that the top of concrete is not going to be perfect. It's going to have some differences, minor or major, hopefully not major. But now what we're going to do is overcome all those differences by checking each bracket grade and finding out the difference between 0 elevation and where the bracket is. So that bracket right there we just checked is 0 at the moment. Now I'm gonna go around and I'm gonna look at all my doorways. That's what I like to do first, and see if one of the doorways is higher than the other, or if there's any real odd spots in the foundation. I can use that to figure out where I'm gonna set elevation exactly, because I always like to find the middle ground on the wall. That bracket right there says it's high a 1/16 of an inch. That one is the same. All right, this bracket, I need my receiver to go down 3/16 of an inch in order for it to be the same as that bracket right there, which means it's up 3/16 compared to this one, or this one may be 3/16 low compared to that. All depends on where you set your elevation. So I think you get the idea. I am going to go around on this wall, and then I'm going to determine what my dimension on all my brackets will be based off of, and then I'll show you how we do that. So once I have my grade determined and I go ahead and check each bracket, I then transfer the number on the laser to the bracket, and that will tell me exactly how to cut and make this column specific. So we'll have grade marks on all these brackets, and what's nice is those are in permanent marker. They will be there for the remainder of the build, and at any point, if we're doing anything in this area and I need to know, okay, where is 0 elevation, I know that this bracket is minus 3/16, which means it's high 3/16 of an inch from 0, so that I remove 3/16 of an inch from this column. Whenever I see this, it says 3/16. Let's turn that off. When that shows 3/16, and you see how I move my grade stick, see how it goes 3/16, but if I'm not exactly sticking straight up and down, I can change that. So I got this bubble right here, and what I really want to do is make sure that that bubble is in the center of that red circle. That way I know my stick is perfectly plumb, and I can get an accurate dimension, because even just slightly moving it, that just changed it 1/4 of an inch. So when I go transfer this dimension to my columns, 1/4 of an inch can make a big difference. Worst I found was 3/16 high, and the lowest I found was 0. So what that means is that we're gonna go off the low point, because when the concrete gets poured against this wall, I don't want the concrete higher on the floor than my wall. So we're gonna go with the lowest bracket, which I've already got set at 0. We will actually deduct whatever, in this instance, 3/16 off of the column, so that it, in essence, is lower right here by 3/16 of an inch, so that at the top where my trusses are, those are all perfect. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, go ahead and ask me some questions down below, and maybe we'll do a whole dedicated video on elevation, grade sticks, lasers, and how to be as accurate as possible. So now that I got my brackets all marked, I'm gonna go ahead and just write all these dimensions down so that I can transfer them to the post. Now don't judge me about my handwriting, but I'll just go ahead, take a little block of wood, and I'll write all the dimensions off of those brackets so that I can take it over to my post pile and make the appropriate marks on each post. Each one of these numbers represents a column, and that will be what I adjust on it so that the grade at the top, where my truss heel sits, are all exactly level. So this is our story pole, and this pole right here, this 2x that we're using, will be used across the entire build to mark all of our columns. All these marks that we're putting on the story pole will associate to a mark that will go on the column and show exactly where we need to install our wall girts. Other things that we can put on the story pole to make our job easier is header heights for first floor, floor joists for second floor, window locations, door locations, like anything that's going to be consistent throughout the job, you can put on this story pole, and when we put it on the elevation marks, if it's minus 3/16, we'll shift this down 3/16, and then all the marks on the column will be exactly where we want them. This one right here says negative 3/16. Now the common point is heel. The truss heel is at 17 foot. So what this means is I'm gonna take my tape measure and I have a negative 3/16. I'm gonna go to this end, and instead of marking 17 feet, I will mark 17 minus 3/16. Now, just for the purpose of this video, I would normally do all of these at once just to be somewhat efficient. I'm gonna take my story pole and I'm gonna set my heel at the mark up here. What that means is now going to center out and zero out all of these marks so that they're consistent. When I set this post in that bracket that is 3/16 high, my heel will be the same elevation as this post right here that's in a bracket that is at 0. So hopefully that makes sense. Story poles can be used across the job site on many different applications. Anytime you're doing repetitious work like this where I have to mark all of these columns, it would be silly to pull my tape measure out and make each mark. I just make my heel mark at the top based off that dimension and set my story pole right on the heel, and I'm gonna make my marks. All right, I'm gonna get back to work, get all these marked up, and then we'll go lay them out in their locations. So you can see the ease in which this goes. If you just take a little bit of setup time, make yourself a story pole. I just set my heel on all my marks I made. Very easily, I can make my marks on each column without having to pull my tape out every time. This also helps reduce error, because when you have to read a tape measure multiple times, do the math, and figure out where all your marks are gonna go on every post, that's when you make mistakes. Even if you know what you're doing, you could still accidentally mark the wrong side of a measurement or something. Let's be honest, we've all done it. So once the columns are made up, we're just gonna lay them out in the designated bracket that corresponds to the number that we marked on the end. And from here, we're gonna go ahead. Greg has been working over here tirelessly on cutting up our wall girts. Those can then, in that pile right there, get transferred right onto the marks that we made on the columns, and we'll build our walls right here on the ground. So while Greg's probably gonna finish up cutting and laying these out, I'm gonna keep making up our columns. So one of the questions that I do get asked often is, when you guys build your walls on the ground, how do you make sure that they are square when you put them together? And what we're gonna do is, when we lay out our posts, our columns, and we set them in the bracket, we're gonna make sure that they're all lined up consistently at the bottom. Usually we have a grade mark, and we'll set them right on that grade mark. Then what we're gonna do is we're gonna measure off of our wall and check each column. Remember, when we set these brackets, we took our time to lay out, make sure it was square, straight, and all that good stuff, so that we can use it to ensure that our walls are squarely measured off of it and then spaced out 8 foot on center from there on out. That way, when we build our walls, not only is it straight based off of the ends, but also square based off of the wall on the end wall. So now I'm working on these end columns, and these are the posts that are gonna be on our end wall. We call our end wall the wall on the end of the building that is usually a gable. You guys probably already noticed all of our columns are the same size, same length, and then we have these center notches notched out of here where our truss is set. Well, when it gets to our end columns that don't have trusses, we use this center notch to put an extended board, as you can see here, This is an extended board that I use math to figure out where the top of it is going to be in relation to the truss. So the goal is for this to be nailed and go all the way to the top of the truss, giving us a nice solid, connection from the foundation all the way to the top of the truss. So one downside of using these engineered columns is that they are milled down or planed to 5 3/8 thickness. So that means when we're adding this board to the middle, we also need to plane them down. And instead of being 5 1/2, they need to be planed to 5 3/8. No big deal though. It kind of leaves us with some nice sexy B-roll to end this video on. And also guys, make sure that you're subscribed to the channel because you're gonna wanna follow along with this one as we continue to build the Barndominium. Next video, we'll start building these walls and hopefully getting them stood up so you can see what this is all gonna look like. We'll see you on the next one.